Welcome, everybody. I am Michael Schachter, the president of the Carolina Nature Coalition, and this presentation definitely goes along with our mission, which is to raise public awareness of environmental and environmental justice issues, and definitely to engage citizens in meaningful community action. Today we have Rachel Bisesi, and Rachel actually presented for us in person a few years ago, and we're happy to have her back virtually. Rachel is the Coastal Education Coordinator for the North Carolina Coastal Federation, and she will talk to us about her organization and about its programs. So I turn it over to Rachel, and if you want, people can mute themselves while she's speaking. Later on, I think Tom said he would mute everybody. And later on, you can ask questions. Well, go ahead, Rachel.
Oh, thank you, Michael. And I guess if you have questions too, if you wanted to put them in the chat box, along the way, I can try to answer them, while I'm going through the slideshow. I'm going to do a little PowerPoint, mostly of pictures. And usually when I present too, I like to keep it pretty informal. So if you all do have questions, wave at me or something, and I'll try to stop so we can try to answer them the best I can. So I'm going to share my PowerPoint screen. Can everybody see that? I guess you can give me a thumbs up, maybe. Okay, great. Again, my name is Rachel, and I'm an education coordinator for the North Carolina Coastal Federation. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of our projects locally. In these two pictures here, you can see on the left a rain garden, and then on the right, a living shoreline. So I'm going to touch on those types of projects, and then also some of our marine debris efforts that are local. Let's see if I can get the slide to go to the next one. Yeah, so I'm going to start with, a little bit about the Coastal Federation, what we do, and then go into those different projects. Stormwater solutions first, then marine debris cleanups, and then shoreline erosion. So if you're not familiar, the Coastal Federation is a nonprofit. It was founded in 1982, which means that this year we are celebrating our 40th anniversary. So I'm trying to convince them to have like a big party this summer. We do our Pelican Awards. I'm trying to convince them to do it like an 80s theme, but I don't know if they're going to go for that. But we're excited about the 40th anniversary. We have 3 offices, and the office that I'm located at is off of Highway 24, kind of in between Morehead City and Swansboro, near Croatan High School. But we also have an office up in Wanchese in the Outer Banks, and then one down in Wrightsville Beach as well. We have about 30 staff members kind of spread out in those offices and 30 board members. In our work, we kind of focus on 5 main goals, which you can kind of see listed there towards the bottom of that slide. And it's clean water, water quality, living shorelines, oysters, reducing marine debris, and coastal management. And so I'm just going to touch on the clean water, living shorelines, and marine debris aspect. But if you have questions about some of our other goals, feel free to let me know, and I can try to answer those as well. In that picture, you see some students out in the salt marsh. We love doing a lot of education programs with students. We actually did a program, I don't know, 2 years ago, Michael, with a group from New Bern. And I think Michael and his wife came out and joined us on a trip to Cape Lookout. But we do a lot of estuary type education. And then we do publish an online news service that is free. It's just Coastal Review Online. And if you go to coastalreview.org, you can join it for free, and you'll get a an email every day of the work week, which has a news story on just coastal environmental issues. Okay. So, as I'm sure you are all aware, there are some issues that we faced here on the coast, climate change being a big one, flooding, sea level rise, and polluted habitats and waterways. We have a lot of issues with stormwater runoff, the marine debris problem, and then shoreline erosion. And so what are some ways that we can be more resilient and find solutions to these problems? I don't know if y'all have heard this term nature-based solutions. It's kind of one of the newer ways people are describing like stormwater best management practices and living shorelines, just ways that we can work with nature to protect our environment. And then education, of course. That group in the middle, those are students from East Carolina University. They come every year and do service projects with us for what they call alternative spring break, which is pretty cool. You know, when I was in spring break, I was not doing service projects. So it's pretty noble of them to come and work with us during their spring break time. I'm going to start with stormwater runoff, which I'm sure you all are pretty familiar with, but just a refresher, you know, it's that rain that comes down and when it hits hard surfaces that we have, like our roofs, sidewalks, parking lots, can pick up pollutants such as bacteria and chemicals and trash and wash them into our waterways. And so what are some things that we can do to help prevent stormwater runoff? Well, you can make your yard a smart yard. Have y'all seen this publication before? I'm gonna put it in the chat box. I can't see the chat on my screen right now, but I'll put a link to it at the end so that you all can see it. But it just has, it's a little handout or booklet with smart ways that you can landscape your yard or your business to help collect stormwater runoff on site and infiltrate rainwater so that it doesn't become polluted runoff. And so that picture on the left is of a rain garden. And here's another rain garden that we have planted with native plants. In the handout, it has, you know, a description of what a rain garden is. And then it also tells you like step by step how you could build your own rain garden. It's just a bowl-shaped garden that helps to collect rainwater, soak it up, and let it infiltrate into the ground. Rain barrels, raise your hand if you have a rain barrel. I see a hand. She got two. Connie's got two rain barrels. Yes.
Yeah, Connie definitely has a rain barrel.
So rain barrels help collect rainwater from the roof, then you can use it to water your landscape. We used to sell these at the Coastal Federation. I don't think we have any at the moment, but you can get them at any of the hardware stores. And then using native plants, rerouting your downspout or using a downspout diverter. Have y'all seen these? You can, they look like giant robot arms. Is what I tell the kids, but you can use it to kind of hook onto the bottom of your downspout so that it diverts the rainwater from your roof into the landscape instead of onto the driveway so that it could become polluted stormwater runoff. And in some studies, you know, just by doing that really simple thing that costs $10 can reduce runoff by up to 90% in your landscape. So simple solution. And then pervious pavement. So we work with different towns, municipalities to try and encourage pervious pavement. This video right here, hopefully it will play, but this is one of our interns, Carly, and she was helping us do an infiltration test at a parking lot with pervious pavement in Onslow County, right along the waterway. You can kind of see the water in the background. This is at a boat ramp. We've been doing a lot of work with the different boat ramps lately. In fact, the Beaufort Lennoxville boat ramp. They just put in permeable pavement there. But this one was in Onslow County. And how long do you think it's going to take for a 5-gallon bucket of water to infiltrate in that little box right there? I know y'all are having good guesses. I can't hear you, but I trust some good guesses. Let's see if the video will play. It took 5.76 seconds for that bucket of water to infiltrate. Oh, somebody's trying to enter. I'm gonna let them in. Okay. And then next I want to talk a little bit about our marine debris project. So just any litter that is in our marine environment. So we do host cleanups. We do volunteer cleanups if you all are ever interested in joining us. And then we also have some large scale cleanup efforts. We had one the past few years with different partners, and we were able to hire crews locally to pick up debris after Hurricane Florence. And from February 2019 to August of this past year, they removed 1,914 pounds of debris. I know what you're thinking. How many blue whales is that equivalent to? Right? 6 blue whales. So they were able to remove a lot of debris through that project. We also have a lost fishing gear recovery effort, which I'll show you some pictures for in just a second, and an effort to remove abandoned and derelict vessels along the coast. And then if you all are interested in marine debris, I would encourage you to look into our, it's a big partnership collaboration with a lot of organizations, but the Marine Debris Action Plan for the state. It is a plan with 5 main goals and different actions that we work with partners to meet. And we have a leadership team and an advisory committee. So if that's something that you are interested in, you know, there's lots of subcommittees and ways that people can get involved. And then there's also a plan to work with aquaculture businesses and help to create some best management practices to reduce marine debris at different aquaculture sites. And of course, I like to do the education with student groups as well. For the lost fishing gear recovery project, I wanted to mention that because that is happening right now in the month of January. So the month of January in the northeastern part of the coast and the central part of the coast, the waters are closed to crabbing. And so that means that all the commercial fishers who are crabbers know that they need to have their pots out of the waterways, the sounds, during that time frame. And starting in 2014, we got some funding from Sea Grant and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration to have commercial fishermen and women help remove abandoned crab pots in the waterways during that time period when crabbing is closed. So Marine Patrol typically does that, but this was a collaborative effort, and we knew that using both Marine Patrol and the knowledge of the commercial fishers would help to remove more pots. And that's exactly what happened. It's been funded by various sources throughout the last 8 years. This year, the project was funded by the General Assembly. And so this is the data from last year. We don't have the data yet from this year because they're still working, but you can see all those little green dots are where they removed crab pots last year. And remember, we're just talking about District 2, which kind of ends at the Emerald Isle Bridge, and then all the way up to the border, the Virginia border, is where these fishers are removing the pots. So last year they removed 3,009 pots. And here's a couple pictures of them out on the boats during that cleanup effort. So we want to remove the ghost pots during that time because they can be navigational hazards as well as hazards to wildlife. They're going to keep catching crabs. Nobody's pulling up that ghost pot, then those animals are going to die, unfortunately. So trying to remove that debris. And then I have a few pictures of some of the vessels. My coworker, Sarah Bodine, her name's on the bottom because she helped to make these slides. I didn't want to claim them, but we have been working with Wildlife Resources Commission and the Division of Coastal Management to remove abandoned and derelict vessels. They're called ADVs for short. And since 2021, so the project kind of started, doing the planning process in 2019, but then we started removing some boats in 2021. There were 126 vessels identified coastwide, and this was after, some of those major storms, Florence and Dorian. And to date, we have removed all but 9 of those vessels. So the Coastal Federation has removed 79 and Wildlife Resources Commission has removed 38, but it is a big collaborative effort. Again, the Division of Coastal Management, they got funding from the Natural Resources Conservation Services, and then we worked with them. So we were actually working with the contractors to pull the vessels out. And then we also got funding from NOAA, National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, and National Fish and Wildlife Foundation for these projects. And then how can you help? You can participate in one of our cleanups if we ever do volunteer events again when there's not a pandemic. You can organize your own, dispose of your waste properly. I think I'm preaching to the choir here, but one reason that we see a lot of debris along the roadways, I think, is because people don't properly secure their trash when they're on the way to the dump. If they have it in a truck bed or something, kind of blows out a lot of the time. And then just reducing your use of single-use plastics and educating your friends about how we can be a part of the solution. And lastly, I know I'm going fast, but I wanted to show y'all some pictures of the living shorelines. We have some really large scale projects that I listed on the left there. Whitaker Point in Oriental, White's Point in Atlantic. There's a big project at Camp Albemarle, the aquarium and Pineville Shores, Trinity Center. And then right now, if you live on the waterfront or you have friends that live on the sound side or a creek side, we have some funding from the state to do cost share programming with people to build living shorelines. So tell all your friends. And we've been working with contractors to try to train them to build living shorelines. And of course, we use it as a student service learning opportunity as well. But that picture you can see is a living shoreline using the mesh bags of recycled oyster shells. And those volunteers in the background are planting marsh grasses. So they're planting Spartina alterniflora behind there. And traditionally, what you see on the sound side for protection are bulkheads or seawalls like this. And what happens is when the waves come up to those hard structures, they don't have anywhere to go, so they bounce back into the water. And usually over time, what we see is a scouring of the habitat in front of that hard structure. And so with a living shoreline though, and this is the same exact site. This is at Hammock's Beach State Park. They took out part of the bulkhead and they built a living shoreline. So they used granite rock there, and then they planted marsh grasses behind it. But the living shoreline allows the waves to be absorbed and kind of soak into and dissipate into the grasses behind it. So you're not losing the marsh habitat. Let's see. And there's a couple different ways you can build a living shoreline. So some places you may just need to plant. We generally plant smooth cordgrass or Spartina alterniflora, depending where we are. There's a couple other species that we'll use. And then sometimes you might need to put a structure offshore. I'm actually going to go backwards. So that offshore sill with grasses behind it. A sill is just kind of a fancy word for a like speed bump that we're putting out there. And those two pictures, they used granite rock. I think that first one on the left is actually at the aquarium at Pine Knoll Shores. And then that next one is at Jones Island at Hammock's Beach State Park. And then sometimes you might have like a little escarpment or cliff right up against the marsh. And so you can build what is called a marsh toe revetment, where the structure kind of hugs the shoreline. And these are just some before and after photos. This is just planting at Jones Island, Hammock's Beach State Park. I do want to mention that for this project, volunteers planted like thousands and thousands of plugs. So that is one reason why it has done so well. But the roots of the marsh grasses and the rhizomes all interconnect together, and they help to support a stable shoreline and prevent erosion. And so there's several different ways to build a living shoreline, and people are coming up with more and more as we speak. We have been using a lot of times these mesh bags filled with recycled oyster shells if it's at a site where oysters are growing naturally. So we have been using this netting that has little holes in it, and then the bag or the shells are inside of it, and baby oysters will find the old shells and attach to them, and then they grow up and form a new living oyster reef like you see on the right there. And we do a lot of volunteer events with this type of project. It has been in the past, you know, we used this plastic mesh, which we know isn't ideal, but we needed something that wouldn't break down very quickly. We tried some other materials that just broke down too quickly for the structure to stay in place. And now we are testing out some other materials. One we got from the Netherlands that is supposed to be able to last for 5 to 20 years. We're really excited about it, and it is a biodegradable mesh. But it's been, you know, that's been a long process of people trying to come up with that material. But we're just testing it now, so we're excited for that. Where do we get the oyster shells? We usually purchase most of them from a seafood company in Elizabeth City, and then we pay for this big tractor trailer to come to our office and dump them. Sometimes we get them from different groups when they have an oyster roast, or different restaurants as well. And we've got on our website now a page with different site, like a map, and you can see where you can recycle your oyster shells on the coast depending on where you live. And we are currently working with a Coastal Environmental Partnership to purchase some dumpsters to have at the landfill site in Tuscarora, and there's 2 other ones in Craven and Pamlico County. So we're trying to expand the amount of dumpsters that we have at the local landfill sites so that people can easily drop off their shells. And I'm excited about that project because I'm working with the students at Havelock High School and Newbern High School. Fingers crossed if they can go on a field trip because of COVID, but they're gonna help us paint the dumpsters with like an oyster scene on it. I wanted to show these pictures just because it gives a good view of a living shoreline that survived. This is right after Hurricane Florence, and you can see on the left, the dock didn't really make it, but the living shoreline did pretty well. And then this is another one with the oyster shell bags. You can see just the growth of new oysters 2 years after construction on those recycled shells. And then, like I said, there's a lot of different ways to do it though. So these are some other techniques. Sandbar Oyster Company has a product called Oyster Catcher. They're on the left, that's at the Pine Knoll Shores Aquarium. There's also these things called oyster domes that are big like concrete domes with holes in them for fish to swim through. There's oyster castles, which are kind of like concrete Legos that you stack on top of each other. Reef maker ecosystems, also kind of like Legos, but more sturdy, I guess. And then I think I showed y'all some of these pictures where you can just use the granite rock as well. And then this is a before and after, 9 years apart. And what can you do? Tell all your friends about Living Shorelines. We also have a website called the Living Shorelines Academy.org that we help to put together with our partner group that has a lot of great information as well. And then this is my last slide, I promise. I've been talking a long time, but I'm the educator, so I had to throw in an education slide. Research has shown that environmental education programs that have action outcomes have 3 recurring characteristics, which is extended duration. So you're working with the same group of students multiple times. Place-based, you're connecting those students to their environment where they are, their community, and you're practicing action. So you're doing a project with them as part of a solution to some problem. So that is the method or the approach that we try to use with our programming with students. So you can see in those first 3 pictures, this is the same group of high school students. They helped to make the oyster bags. They built a living shoreline using the bags, and they did an oyster dissection. Whoop. And then the other students are working in their school rain garden. That's at Arthur Edwards Elementary School. And then here on the end, we're planting a rain garden in the town of Swansboro. And I lied to y'all. This is actually my last slide. Apologize. Ways you can be involved. You can join the Coastal Federation, donate, volunteer. Hopefully we'll have more volunteer events coming up. We have that snazzy license plate. And then one way you can help is just follow us on social media. Our social media name is just NC Coastal Fed. And that is it.
If there are no other questions, I want to thank you, Rachel, again.
Yes.
And as always, and we will get the material from you, and we will put that out, and we will hopefully send some young people your way.
Sounds good. Thank you all for listening and all your questions. Oh.
All right. And it's going to be rebroadcast on our website, carolinanaturecoalition.org, when it gets redone. So if you want to hear it again, or if you know someone who has missed it and wants to hear it, please let them know. And have a good evening.